Hi, my name is Jessica DeMichiel, and I'm an attorney with the Coppola Firm. I practice in the area of healthcare, and I assist many of our clients with things such as transitions, labor and employment matters, and things having to do with licensing and regulatory compliance. Today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about things you need to consider when you're getting ready to either sell your practice or close your practice. Aside from finding a buyer if you're selling your practice, there's a couple things that you just need to start paying attention to as you get closer to the time when you're going to close or sell that practice. One of the first things I want to talk to you about is your work in progress or treatment in progress, prepaid treatment or work, and what to do with any billings or accounts receivables that might be outstanding as you come closer to the time when you're going to close or sell the practice. When it comes to work in progress or treatment in progress, you want to start to try to complete as much of that as possible in advance of either closing or selling your practice. If you've had patients that have prepaid for treatment, that treatment either needs to be completed or you're going to have to either give that amount of money to the new owners to complete the treatment or reimburse the patient and give them a recommendation on a different provider if you're going to be closing the practice. When it comes to your billables or your accounts receivables, those are things you want to start really working on aggressively prior to the closing or sale of your practice. That way you can try to bill and collect as much as possible. You have to remember that once you close a practice or sell a practice, you're not going to have staff anymore to assist you with that. So you're going to want to make sure to do as much of that as possible in advance while you still have staff to help you, and so that you can take as much of that income as possible. When it comes to selling a practice, there are owners or buyers who will sometimes assume the accounts receivable. But again, you're giving them money for work that you've already done under your period of ownership. So you do want to try to bill and collect before that sale finishes. The next thing that comes with either closing a practice or selling a practice is obviously at some point you're going to have to notify your patients that these are occurring. If you're closing your practice, the law has certain time periods by which you have to give that notice, and what the content of the notice needs to be that you're actually closing the practice, meaning that nobody's going to buy it and assume that patient care. So you need to make sure that you comply with those notice requirements if you're going to actually close your practice. Now, when you sell a practice, it can be a little bit different. You assume that the new owner or the buyer is going to take over your patient base unless the patient chooses to go somewhere else. So when it comes to working with a buyer, if you're selling your practice, you're going to want to put a transition strategy into place. This is going to be a method by which you and the buyer or the new owner inform the patients that you've sold the practice. Typically, you're going to endorse the new owner. You're typically selling it to somebody that you like and you want your patients to go to. So there's usually going to be some type of endorsement of the new owner or the buyer. And then you need to have a method by which they can contact either you or the new owner. So you're going to want them to have a method of contacting the new owner and the buyer of your practice so that they can continue to be seen by a practitioner and get the appropriate care and treatment that they need. And then a lot of the times they're going to have questions or concerns for you. So you're going to want to have some method by which they can still contact you after that sale of the practice is completed. Now, the notifications, they're done in various forms. Some people just do a simple letter. Some people use emails or text messages formats or messaging in a patient portal. It can even be so savvy as having videos that go in with those notifications so that you can say goodbye, thank your patients, let them know what your plans are next, such as retirement. So you're going to have to put a transition process into place and make sure that that is compliant with the law. Now, patients have the right to choose their providers. So even though you sell your practice to a new owner, just be aware that patients are not required to transition to that buyer or that new owner. They have the right to choose their own healthcare providers and go elsewhere. So that brings us really to our last topic. What do you do with your medical records and ensuring that your patients have continued access to them for the periods of time required by law? Now, if you're closing a practice, the burden's really going to be on you at the end of the day. You're going to have to find a way to physically store paper medical records in a site that's secure, ensuring that the records don't get lost or damaged in any way, and that they're maintained for the periods of time required by law. And those periods of time can be pretty significant, and upwards of 10 years even, depending on the type of patient base that you have. When it comes to electronic medical records, you're also going to have to need to ensure that you have access to the EMR database that you use, again, for a certain period of time, and so that you can produce those upon request. If you're selling a practice, it can be a little bit different. The assumption typically is if you sell a practice that the new owner or the buyer is going to take over both the custody and the production of the medical records. And so in order to do that, you need to make sure that you're not violating the law, including HIPAA. So you have to put a medical record transfer and custody agreement into place to ensure that that is done appropriately. They're going to get the physical paper medical records. They're going to get access typically to your electronic medical records. And if there's requests, the patients need to know how to make those requests. And then the buyer or the new owner is going to be required to produce them in the time periods under the law. Now, if you're thinking about either selling or closing a practice, don't hesitate to give our office a call, and we'll be more than happy to help you in that transition. Thank you.